Tonight, crisis at Raith Rovers. The author Val McDermott pulls her sponsorship and directors quit after the club signed David Goodwillie, who a judge ruled to be a rapist.
I think this is one of the worst decisions that this club has ever made at board level. And so I walk away with great sadness.
Also making the headlines 2 years after promising to improve the lives of young people in care. Why are some campaigners saying the situation is worse?
In sport, on the eve of the Old Firm derby, we'll have the latest news from both camps.
And the show hoping to get theatres and audiences back on their feet. I'm Kellyanne Woodland in Edinburgh.
And I'm John Mackay in Glasgow. This is the STV News at 6. Good evening. They had hoped he would be signing to score goals to take them to the Scottish Premiership. But tonight, Raith Rovers Football Club are facing a crisis after handling a contract to David Goodwillie.
The best-selling crime author Val McDermott, who was a major sponsor of the club, has ended her lifelong support, saying the prospect of a rapist playing in a shirt with her name on it makes her feel physically sick. Well, our senior reporter Gordon Cree has spent the day at Starks Park. Gordon, there's been a lot of strong reaction against the club.
There has, Kellyanne. Raith Rovers find themselves in a pretty big mess here. Val McDermott said today that the presence of David Goodwillie at Starks Park is a stain on the club, and that's been condemned widely across social media, including by Nicola Sturgeon and Gordon Brown, who is, of course, a Raith fan. Now, in the last little while, the club has issued a statement doubling down on their decision to sign him. They say that there is work to do to restore trust among those who are unhappy about it, but ultimately they're sticking to their original position, which that this is a footballing decision. But, you know, at a time when football is often accused of having a questionable moral compass, some will take heart from the fact that a Raith fan today has started a fundraiser for Rape Crisis Scotland, the charity, and it's already raised thousands of pounds. Inside the stadium today, preparations were being made for tonight's game, a match being played under the floodlights on a stand bearing Val McDermott's name. She's put hundreds of thousands of pounds into Raith Rovers, but she says her support is finished after the signing of a rapist, calling it a disgusting and despicable move. She added that he'd never expressed a shred of remorse and said she'd be tearing up her season ticket.
I really applaud Val McDermott for the stand she's taken, and that's, I think it's really encouraging for women across Scotland who've experienced rape to see people willing to stand up and speak out about this and say this decision sends totally the wrong message. And I do think the club should reflect really carefully on the decision they've taken and the message it sends. David
Goodwillie, seen here earlier in his career, was found by a judge to be a rapist after his victim took him to court in a civil case. The ruling was later upheld on appeal. Late last night, Rovers announced his signing against the wishes of at least one director of the club who has now resigned.
When I looked at my own role, I thought, well, how can I go out and try to encourage young people, boys and girls, to come to the club and say it's a community club, you know, if we're making this kind of decision.
That departure has been followed by the captain of the women's team, a number of club volunteers and a staff member who all believe their positions have been made untenable.
We don't want to lose women to the game at all, and we are offering our support to the women's club to make sure that we can help them through a situation that they have found themselves in, not of their making.
By this afternoon, Rovers had yet to make any official comment, and getting anyone at Starks Park to speak was proving tricky. Mr. Farmer? Hello. You've been round this club many years. Do you feel let down by what they've done today?
Well, I've absolutely no comment to make at all.
Supporters groups say they're appalled by their club's actions.
They mentioned it the first time around, and everybody went off on one. No, and they just ignored us. Now, they obviously don't care. They don't care what we have to say about it. They want to say that we're a community football club. How?
It was it was just presented as just a normal football decision, a football transfer. We all know, the history of David Goodwillie, and to just brush it away as this is a great signing, he'll score the goals that will get us to the Premiership, really wasn't good enough from our perspective.
This veteran fan, though, believes there's no problem.
Hi, if the guy scores 2 or 3 goals, he'll be a hero. And, fine. He's here to play football and he deserves to make a living.
It looks like that opinion is very much in the minority, though, with tonight another sponsor pulling out. Gordon Cree, STV News, Kirkcaldy.
The organisation leading a major overhaul of Scotland's care system admits it's shameful the lives of many young people have not improved since it was launched 2 years ago. The promise was set up to drive changes recommended by an independent care review.
The commitment received the backing of all political parties, with the First Minister saying it would not simply tinker around the edges. However, campaigners claim little has changed, and in some key areas the situation is worse. Political correspondent Ewan Petrie's report contains flash photography.
I would like you to leave them a legacy, a lasting legacy of change, and be part of that movement to equality.
In September 2016, an STV documentary revealed a care system in desperate need of reform. The following month at the SNP conference, the First Minister took action.
I am announcing today that we will launch an independent root and branch review of the care system.
At its conclusion, the promise was launched to ensure the changes demanded are in place by 2030, although it committed to deliver reform as it went.
The promise contains so much good ideas on early intervention, on supporting families to stay together, on helping children and young people be heard, but our advocates are telling us that we're not actually seeing that yet on the ground.
Things are either the same or they're a little bit worse.
Jamie Kinloughlin is a long-term campaigner for change. His research has found no improvement in several key areas, including the number of people who die shortly after moving out of care.
There is a real risk here that we replicate the exact same behaviour that the promise has said is dangerous. The First Minister said that we would rip things up and start again if that was necessary, and I think it's hard to see evidence of things being ripped up and started again.
Robert Foster worked with care-experienced young people before becoming a councillor in North Ayrshire.
So how difficult is it for local authorities to put these policies into practice?
We think it's going to cost us, to do the first part of the promise, about £2.5 million. And so far I think we've received about £250,000 in the first 2 years to hire a couple of staff members. For me, the promise at the moment is basically a government quango. It's sitting in an office in Glasgow or Edinburgh when we're allowing a broken system to just trundle along.
Staff at this charity believe a lack of data around the number of people in care, as well as the continuing stigma within communities, are acting as barriers to radical reform.
We support the promise. We want to see the promise achieve, and we want to go beyond the promise. There's definitely a situation where there's a lot of goodwill in Scotland, but we're now in a situation where there's implementation purgatory. It's not happening quickly enough, and it's not bold enough.
Can you look those care-experienced young people in the eye and say things have improved?
So for so many care-experienced children, young people and care-experienced adults, their lives won't have improved over the last 2 years, and things will have been really, really hard and may even have got worse. And that's heartbreaking and shameful, and it shouldn't be the case. But what I would also say is there has never been this level of sustained commitment to implementation.
The aims of the promise are ambitious, but patience is already running thin. 2 years on, the priority is ensuring the momentum to change the lives of care-experienced people is not lost.
And Ewan, what are the Scottish Government saying?
Well, two key questions in this are around funding and responsibility. Where's the money coming from to pay for these changes, and who's responsible for making sure they are put into place? On funding, the Scottish Government has said it's investing at least £500 million over the course of this Parliament to support families, and they should start to feel the benefits of that next year. And on accountability, well, ministers say they're committed to keeping the promise by 2030, and they're working with local authorities and charities to ensure that's done. And the government says it will be accountable to the Scottish Parliament and young people for its plan to ensure that the promise is kept. But you can see the full report on Scotland Tonight this evening at 10:40.
Ewan, thank you.
The Prime Minister has arrived in Ukraine tonight as his critics question whether he's seizing on this foreign crisis to deflect from problems at home. Boris Johnson is still fighting for his political future in the wake of Sue Gray's report into allegations of Downing Street parties during lockdown. Well, live now to our Westminster correspondent Catherine Sampson. And Catherine, MPs have had 24 hours to digest that report now. What's the mood been like there today?
Well, look, last night Boris Johnson addressed his Conservative MPs. For some of them, this may have been enough to win them back round. He was promising to listen more to them. For others, though, I think there has been a renewed sense of anger overnight. And today we've seen one more Tory MP, Peter Aldiss, publicly call for the Prime Minister to go. And in doing so, he, of course, joins the ranks of Douglas Ross, the Scottish Conservative leader, and takes the total number up to 10. Now, as you say, the Prime Minister is not here today. He is in the Ukraine. He flew there today, this evening. In the last hour, he has been hosting a press conference with the Ukrainian president where he has been calling for Russia to step back. But the very first question he was asked at that press conference was about his own political future and whether he's done enough to survive.
My focus is entirely on delivering on the priorities of the British people, and they include ensuring that we are secure in our relations with our friends and allies, and that our friends and allies are secure.
Well, we're told Boris Johnson is due to have a phone call with Vladimir Putin tomorrow, but we also expect him to be back here at Westminster in the Commons 12 p.m. for Prime Minister's questions.
All right, Catherine, thanks very much.
Exams should go ahead as planned in Scotland schools this year. In a parliamentary statement, the Education Secretary pledged more support would be put in place to help students who have missed time in the classroom because of COVID. The Conservatives say it's too little, too late. Well, our political editor Colin Mackay was watching the statement. And Colin, what does this mean to students?
Well, this means that 4th, 5th and 6th years will be sitting Nat 5s, Highers and Advanced Highers this year. After 2 years of disruption and exams chaos, this is the first time most of them will have sat high-stakes, proper big exams. Now, the SQA say that there will be a generous approach to grading this year and there will be extra support for the students. But the Scottish Government did promise free tablets or digital devices to all pupils in Scotland. The Conservatives in the Chamber today said that 80% of kids haven't had them yet. They say it's a broken SNP manifesto promise. Now, a lot of these young people are sitting their prelims right now, but the big problem for exams is the amount of time out of school that they're missing because of COVID.
And Colin, the First Minister gave Parliament a COVID update too.
Well, she said that numbers are still increasing among under 15s, up 7% last year. Now, cases are also increasing among 25 to 44-year-olds, so that's parents and carers catching it off these kids. On Friday, there were more than 34,000 kids off school because of COVID. Last week, almost 1,600 teachers off. So there's still some debate going around in the education sector at the moment about the future of masks in secondary schools. They're compulsory right now. The Conservatives want to see that lifted. But these numbers that we're seeing in schools over the last couple of weeks continuing to increase means that they could be in place a little bit longer than ministers had been hoping for.
Colin at the Scottish Parliament, thank you.
Now, other stories across Scotland, and efforts are continuing to reconnect thousands of homes who've been without power for several days. Almost 9,000 households in rural Aberdeenshire, Perthshire and Angus are still cut off. Scottish and Southern Energy say they hope to reconnect everyone by the middle of the week.
Homelessness in Scotland is rising. Official figures show 14,000 households lost their homes and more than 13,000 were in temporary accommodation between April and September last year. That's a 3% rise in 2020.
And nervous flyers look away now. Passengers from Aberdeen to Heathrow had a white-knuckle attempt to land in high winds. The aircraft appeared close to tipping over before returning to the sky. All passengers and crew escaped unharmed.
Suggestions that Mull could be linked to the mainland by a bridge or a tunnel have met with a lukewarm response from islanders. The idea is being considered by ministers as part of a review of transport links across the country. But residents say the focus should be on improving ferry services. Sasha Spratt reports.
Oban, the gateway to the islands. A short crossing takes you to Mull in 40 minutes. But as I discovered, things can change at the last minute.
Hang on. There's a problem on one of the boats. They're going to make a decision what the other one's going on. Right, okay. Yeah. So it's 50-50 at the minute? Yes.
10 minutes later and the service has been cancelled. My options: wait for the next boat, which was already fully booked, or take a detour to the other crossing servicing the north side of the island. It's a 67-mile drive to Loch Allen. It takes over 2 hours, crossing 2 bridges, and relies on an extra ferry at Corran. The roads wind round the hills and much of it is single track. With bad weather, breakdowns and staff sickness all causing delays and cancellations, forcing me to go on this rather significant detour. The idea of a fixed link between the mainland and the Isle of Mull is quite attractive, especially for me as a visitor. Finally on the island, and people here are more hesitant to the idea of a fixed crossing.
I'd much rather they provided a more frequent and reliable ferry service.
Will never happen.
Not in our lifetime.
No.
I think it would certainly solve some problems. Whether I think it's the right thing for the island, possibly not.
It will take time to put any plans in place. Businesses who rely on this service want to see a more immediate solution to the problems. Round the corner from the ferry port, the Inverluston Mussel Farm needs regular crossings to get fresh shellfish off the island to customers.
I'm sure it would be good in some ways. It would change the island, it would change the dynamic quite a lot, but being able to know that when your customer phones you up and says, we need some more shellfish, we need some more mussels from you this afternoon, we can do it, but we can't get a ferry. We just need a ferry service now. In
Tobermory, the island bakery sells snacks and treats to shops around Scotland and the UK. It's run by Joe Reid, chair of the Mull and Iona Ferry Committee.
It's the most ridiculous proposal for this island, for Mull. It may work elsewhere, and there will be islands where a fixed link is absolutely the right solution. But 5 minutes looking at a map, or even if they'd spent 10 minutes talking to people on Mull, they would have known that it's really not feasible in our circumstances.
A fixed crossing may give businesses the certainty they need, but for some, it's a bridge too far. Sasha Spratt, STV News on the Isle of Mull.
Let's get to sport now, and here's Ramat.
Get your fill of the action. STV Sport, sponsored by Papa John's Pizza.
A very good evening. We've sent out a statement. The words of Rangers captain James Tavernier after the club signed Aaron Ramsey from Juventus. Ramsey will have to wait to make his debut. He isn't fit for tomorrow's Old Firm derby. Across at Celtic, Daizen Maeda could be in the squad for the clash. We'll hear from Ange Postecoglou shortly, but first, the very latest from the Ibrox camp. Some claim he's the biggest signing Rangers have made since Paul Gascoigne joined the club 27 years ago. Aaron Ramsey had offers from England and the continent, but he opted for a move to the Scottish champions.
First contact I had with him was over the weekend, and to be able to bring in a player like Aaron was is a very good opportunity for us. Luckily, all the hard work for Ross Wilson he put in the last days, we could bring him in, he will bring experience and quality to the squad.
To sign someone of that magnitude is really sending a statement out from the club. A player from Juventus, and he's here to help us continue building and strengthening the team to what we want at the end of the season.
The midfielder hasn't played since November, so he's not fit enough to face Celtic. One player who will start is Alan McGregor. The keeper has received his manager's backing following his errors against Ross County.
Alan is the number one goalkeeper, with goalkeepers, if they make a mistake, it's most of the time it's crucial. But I think Ellen is still is a great goalkeeper. He saved us many times this season, and it would be strange for me to get him out of the team.
Rangers are still without Alfredo Morelos. He's away on international duty. Last week, the striker didn't make the Colombia squad for the game against Peru.
You know, it's a pity for him and also for us as a club that he's not even in the squad. So, you know, he's been 2 weeks away but not featured in the game. So I don't know if he will be in the squad for the Argentina game. But, you know, to not have him in the squad and Morelos, you know, not having minutes with his country, you know, it's very harsh.
Leon Balogun is fit and is in the squad for tomorrow's showdown at Celtic Park.
He scored on his Celtic debut. But will Daizen Maeda make his Old Firm debut tomorrow night? The Japanese striker is on international duty, playing 20 minutes in this afternoon's World Cup qualifier against Saudi Arabia.
We'll see how he is. He gets in tomorrow morning, so like I said, he played 20 minutes. I haven't seen the game and we haven't spoken to him yet, so we'll probably have a chat with him, and then I'll probably have a chat with him tomorrow when he lands and see how he feels. Chance for the squad. Definitely won't start, but chance for the squad, so we'll just see how he is.
There may also be a shock return for captain Callum McGregor, who trained today, just 2 weeks after sustaining a serious facial injury. The 1-0 victory over Dundee United made it 12 wins in 13 for Celtic, but they haven't put one over their city rivals in more than 2 years.
It's important, as you said, particularly for our supporters, because you know there's no doubting that this is a fixture that they look forward to, and particularly at home, they want to have an enjoyable night, and that means us performing well and us winning.
And what does the Celtic manager think of Rangers signing Aaron Ramsey?
Yeah, good for the league, but I think ultimately with all these signings, whether they're high profile or not, it comes down to performances. I mean, no one had heard of Kyogo before I brought him here, but no one's going to tell me he's not good for the Scottish game.
Tom Rogic won't make it back in time from his international duty with Australia, with Kyogo and David Turnbull still sidelined and Nir Bitton suspended. Ronnie Charters, STV News.
St Mirren's deadline day signings Jordan Jones and Alex Gogic are in the squad for their game against Motherwell tonight. The last time the two sides met, they drew 2-2 at Fir Park earlier this season. The Steelmen sit fourth in the Premiership with 32 points. The Buddies are in ninth place with 25 points.
Always expect a difficult game against Motherwell. They're quite a physical team. They're quite direct. They get good balls up early to Van Veen and then good runners off them. If we play our own game and we play the way that we've played recently against the likes of United and Aberdeen, then we'll give ourselves a good chance of carrying on the run.
Our performance is very good from box to box, but as we know, at least those areas that don't win your games, we need to tidy up and be a little bit more clinical in the opposition's box and a little bit tighter in our box.
And we've got some news in from St Mirren. Richard Tate has signed a new contract until the summer of 2023. There are the rest of the Premiership fixtures taking place tonight. Some cracking fixtures at Edinburgh Derby. Hibs take on Hearts at Easter Road, and a Dundee Derby where Dundee host Dundee United. Elsewhere it's Livingston against St Johnstone and Ross County against Aberdeen. And that is all the sport for me tonight, folks.
Get your fill of the action. STV Sports, sponsored by Papa John's Pizza.
Well, it's been blowy. Is that going to continue? Here's Sean.
A cold snap is on the way. TUI Blue Hotels, sponsor STV Weather.
Well, thank goodness the weather will be quieter tomorrow. The isobars opening up as we go through tonight. The strongest winds heading away out into the North Sea. But then, well, those wind arrows come back Thursday and Friday. Now, I want to show you this on Thursday. Look at the big switch in wind direction. We've got this line almost on the map here because the winds are just twisting round quite sharply from a southerly to a northwesterly as an active weather front comes in from the northwest. By active, I mean heavy rain for a short time, and also strong and gusty winds. So we'll see gusty winds coming back in on Thursday, along with that rain and colder air as well, turning a lot colder by Friday before it turns milder again at the weekend. So really, we can sum it up by unsettled and changeable. Now, for the time being, through tonight, we're going to hang on to outbreaks of rain across many western parts, pushing a little bit further east later on. So for many of us, a cloudy, damp end to the night, but it will be turning a lot milder. Expect Kintyre, Isla, Jura, Colin-Tyree to be about 11 degrees by the end of the night, into the low 50s in Fahrenheit. Stays mild here across western parts tomorrow, cloudy and misty as well with outbreaks of rain. A little bit brighter for a time towards lights of Stirlingshire, Falkirk, Clackmannanshire, before we see that cloud rolling back in later in the afternoon. Temperatures for most of us on that milder side, 9 to 10 degrees. Then on Thursday, strong and gusty winds coming in with that heavy rain before it starts to turn colder later on. Bye-bye.
TUI Blue Hotels, sponsor STV Weather.
And finally, we all know the tunes, and now the Rocky Horror Show has time-warped its way into Scotland, with TV presenter Ori Oduba in the lead role. The show is opening in Glasgow before travelling across the country.
It's been dubbed the biggest party in town and marks a triumphant return for theatres which were empty over Christmas. Well, Polly Bartlett has been down to chat to the stars of the show.
After a slightly rocky start to the year, theatre in Scotland is back.
Just a jump to the left.
And back with a bang at the King's Theatre in Glasgow as the Rocky Horror Show rolls into town.
I'm doing the time warp, but not at a school disco. This is actually my job. I'm getting paid to sing this most iconic song. You would think after all this time, the time warp would start getting a bit fatigued, a bit tired. I can tell you it's exactly the opposite. It's the moment I wait and I look forward to every single night because there's nothing like it.
The show opened last night and the cast were shivering in anticipation at being back on the stage. And none more so than Susie McAdam, a drama teacher from East Kilbride, who secured one of the leading roles after auditioning on Zoom.
Oh, it was incredible. I mean, I remember coming here as a wee girl and watching all the pantos and the touring productions that would come, and it's the first sort of taste of live theatre that I ever experienced, and it's all I wanted to do. And last night I stepped out on the stage and I opened the show on my own with the opening number. And I was just like pinching myself. I was like, is this real?
There had been uncertainty over whether the show would go ahead. But after weeks of closures, theatres reopened last week as Omicron restrictions were lifted.
There's nothing as empty as an empty theatre. So to have people back in the venue is just wonderful. It's a great relief for the staff as well as a tremendous excitement.
The Rocky Horror Show is in Glasgow until the weekend before moving on to venues across Scotland. So make sure to dust off your dancing shoes and time warp your way down to the biggest party in town. Polly Bartlett, STV News.
5, 6, 7, 8.
And what you didn't see there was John doing the time warp throughout the whole of Polly's report.
I pulled my back, that's why I'm sitting like this. From all of us, thanks for watching. Have a good night.
Good night.